I'm reading each sentence from the beginning, okay, very shortly. Then we get the context, otherwise we lose the context. So, let me see whether I can enlarge this. Yeah. So, but if accepting this side of nature, I think what he means is the lower nature, okay, that there is this side of nature, the lower one. We say that all things are fixed in their statutory and stationary law of being. He is talking of spirit and matter, and the ascetic says spirit is the only reality, and the material man says no, it is uh, the physical world is unreal. No, sorry. The ascetic says the spirit is the only reality, the material world is unreal or even defective. It depends. Some people may find it shadow-like. Shadows are not unreal, but they have no importance. So, if we accept this interpretation that the physical world is of no importance and it is only illusion, if we say that. If accepting, not the word if, it is not Sri Aurobindo's view. He is giving the view of the Buddhists and the Mayavadins. But if accepting this side of nature, the lower side of nature, we say that all things are fixed in their statutory and stationary law of being. Note the word stationary, that means they are permanently imperfect. Okay? Law of being. Law means again no freedom. Okay? When there is a law, it restricts your freedom. So in the physical world, no freedom at all, which is spiritually true also. Shilpa, good morning.
Good morning, Rakita.
We
Sorry for
just
being
start,
late.
yeah, we have just started reading from the beginning of the para, 423. So, so and man too must be fixed in his imperfection because there is a connection between the individual and the cosmos. So if the uh, universal is imperfect, man also is imperfect at that level. His ignorance and his sin and weakness and vileness and suffering, if we accept all this, our life loses its true significance. Because the true significance is to find the divine. And you can't find the divine in the lower, then you have to go only up. That's the only solution. And that means you are neglecting the physical world, and that is contrary to Sri Aurobindo's idea. Okay. Man's perpetual attempt to rise out of the darkness and insufficiency of his nature can then have no issue in the world itself. In the world, there is no solution because it is permanently imperfect. Not the word permanently because stationary law of being. Okay? Man's perpetual attempt to rise out of darkness and now he's giving an adjective to attempt. Man's perpetual attempt. If you remember in the chapter 1 itself, right in the beginning, the first paragraph, he says the search for perfection, God, light, freedom keeps coming again and again. So perpetual attempt. Okay. So always in his text you will find that there are reflections of whatever he's saying. You can go back and forward and connect everything that he's saying. His prose and his work is a organic whole. They are not small chapters here and there written unconnectedly. It is very, very connected. So, man's perpetual attempt to arise out of the darkness and insufficiency of his nature can then have no issue in the world itself, in life itself. It's one issue, if there is any at all, because there may be no issue at all. There are some who say, we can't help it, there's nothing, you can't, there's no escape. That's the existentialist and the materialist. So it's one issue. If there is any, must be an escape out of life, out of the world, out of human existence, and therefore out of its eternally unsatisfactory law of imperfect being. Permanently, the world is defective, either into a heaven of the gods or of God, or into the pure ineffability of the absolute. Here also he is giving you three possibilities of escaping from the physical world. First of all, you go into the heaven of the gods. That means the spiritual planes of consciousness, which is the second level. Or of God, that means the personal aspect of God. If you are fortunate, you can get the personal aspect of the God, but you may not have the impersonal aspect of the God. Or of the pure ineffability, ineffability, okay, ineffability, ineffable, Ineffable means you can't put into words, you can't describe. So into the absolute, you disappear into the infinite. That's a Buddhistic solution. So there are three possibilities when you want to escape the physical world. You go out and remain stationed in the spiritual planes of consciousness and help others or not help others. Perpetual ananda there. That also is possible. The many souls who live there in that consciousness don't want to go anywhere else. Neither they want to blot themselves out, nor do they want to come down to the physical world. They can Trishanku, okay? You are in limbo. You are there in the spiritual worlds in limbo, hanging there, neither going up nor coming down. The heaven of the cause, or of God, or into the pure ineffability of the Absolute. The Buddhistic solution, the other solution of permanently in a perfect world of the divine, or of the personal aspect of the divine. He is giving you all the possibilities. Okay. So, if so, man can never really deliver out of the ignorance and falsehood the truth and knowledge. Out of this physical world, he can never get truth. You can't change falsehood into truth and knowledge. Out of the evil and ugliness, it's good and beauty. Out of the weakness and vileness, the power and the glory. Out of the grief and suffering, the joy and delight which are contained in the spirit behind them. In all the forms which are limited, there is the joy, there is the knowledge, there is the ananda, everything is there. Power also is there. But you have to find it. Now, if you give up the physical world, how will you find it? You have found it in the upper layers, that's fine. But you have to say, I want to find it in the darkness. I want to find the divine presence in the darkness. I am not satisfied with finding the divine in the light. I want to find him in the darkness. That's the whole idea. You will not be able to do if you escape, obviously. All he can do is to cut the imperfections away from him and overpass to their balancing opposites. Note the word balancing opposites. In the physical world, the dualities exist. Okay? Because the divine is creating infinitely, and when he creates something, there is the whole range of minus and plus. There is a whole range of perfect and imperfect. Perfect and imperfect at our level. He will say only low level and high level. Okay. He will say there is no good and bad in the divine. Okay. So all he can do is to cut the imperfections away from him and overpass to their balancing opposites. Get out of the dualities. Okay. So that's what the Gita's word is Trigunatita. You go away from the three gunas, body, mind, life, or if you want, sattva, rajas, tamas. You escape from there and go into the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness, you are Trigunatita. No suffering, peace and calm, and you can stay there forever if you want. It depends on the soul's choice. All he can do is to cut the imperfections away from him and overpass to their balancing opposites. Imperfect also. Leave with the ignorance, the human knowledge, with the evil, the human good, with the weakness, the human strength and power, with the strife and suffering, human love and love. All these things you leave aside. Human love also you are not in, because in the physical world, all these things, there are some good things also, like there is human love, there is human kindness, all these things are there. There is human strength also to a certain extent, but you don't want any of that. You want only the divine strength, divine love and divine power. So you go up to the second level. For these are, in our present nature, inseparably entwined together, look like conjoint dualities. When you are in the higher planes of, you go to the highest level, you realize that these are all together always. Okay? The good and the bad, they are there together in the physical world. Both are present. The sin and virtue, they are all at the same level here in the physical world. Negative pole and positive pole are the same unreality. And since they cannot be elevated and transformed because they are permanent, they must be abandoned. Humanity cannot be fulfilled in divinity. This is the way of the opinion of the Buddhists and the Mayavadins, who say that impossible. The physical world is permanently imperfect, so cannot be fulfilled in divinity. It must cease, be left behind and rejected. Whether the result will be an individual enjoyment of the absolute divine nature or of the divine presence or a nirvana in the featureless absolute is a point on which religions and philosophies differ. Each one has got different ideas. So, is a point on which religions and philosophies differ. But in either case, human existence on earth must be taken as condemned to eternal imperfection by the very law of its being. Until now, the aim of yoga in India at least, I don't know much about the outside, but escape from the samsara, get away from the physical world and don't take birth again. Rebirth must be stopped. Reincarnation must be stopped. That was the idea. No, it's not that the other ideas were not there, but this was the dominant idea. Okay? Dominant idea, that's what they say. But in either case, human existence on earth must be taken as condemned to eternal imperfection by the very law of its being. It is perpetually and unchangeably an undivine manifestation in the divine existence. There are many, many religions also who accept this. Exactly like in Islam, in Christianity, even in the Manichaeanism, and probably also in the Parsi Zoroastrianism, there is the Ahriman and the Ahrimans. So there are both. There is the down and there is the up. There is the creation by the non-divine entities and there is creation by the divine entities above. It's a duality. All these philosophies are dualities, dual philosophies. The soul, by taking on manhood, perhaps by the very fact of birth itself, has fallen from the divine. This is what they say. Has committed an original sin or error, which it must be man's spiritual aim. Which it must be man's spiritual aim as soon as he is enlightened, thoroughly to cancel, unflinching to eliminate. Get rid of the physical world and don't come back again into the physical world by rebirth. In fact, there are many philosophies which don't believe in rebirth even. So, after that, you go to heaven or to hell. In the Islamic religion, you go to heaven and enjoy all that you have not enjoyed here. The whole paragraph is not Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, but he is giving the philosophy of those who consider the physical world to be permanently imperfect. Okay? So, we have done it twice, so it's very clear. He is describing the non-Aurobindonian philosophy. Okay? So now we can read the next one. In that case, so one of you decide and read. Who will read? In that case.
I'm reading, Raghunath.
Yeah, go ahead. Archana.
In that case, the only reasonable explanation of such a paradoxical manifestation of creation is that it is a cosmic game, a leela, a play, an amusement of the divine being. It may be he pretends to be undivine, wears that appearance like the mask or makeup of an actor for the sole pleasure of the pretense or the drama, or else he has created the undivine, created ignorance, sin, and suffering just for the joy of a manifold creation. Or perhaps, as some religions curiously suppose, he has done this so that there may be inferior creatures who will praise and glorify him for his eternal goodness, wisdom, bliss, and omnipotence, and strive feebly to come an inch nearer to the goodness in order to share the bliss on pain of punishment by some supposed eternal if, as the vast majority must be their very imperfection, they fail in their endeavor. But to the doctrine of such a Leela, so crudely stated, there is always possible the retort that a God, himself all blissful, who delights in the suffering of creatures or imposes such suffering on them for the faults of his own imperfect creation, would be no divinity, and against him the moral being and intelligence of humanity must revolt or deny his existence. But if the human soul is a portion of the divinity, if it is a divine spirit in man that puts on this imperfection and in the form of humanity consents to bear this suffering, or if the soul in humanity is meant to be drawn to the divine spirit and is his associate in the play of imperfection here, in the delight of perfect being otherwhere, the Leela may still remain a paradox, but it ceases to be a cruel or revolting paradox. It can at most be regarded as a strange mystery inexplicable. To explain it, there must be two missing elements: a conscious assent by the soul to this manifestation, and a reason in the all wisdom that makes the play significant and intelligent.
So, this para is saying, okay, let us look at all the cases if we accept that the physical world is imperfect permanently. And he's saying there are many interpretations, and some of those interpretations are non-spiritual, but there are also some spiritual interpretations. The physical world is unreal, and he has made, God has made this because there is some justification. Most of those justifications are wrongly stated. Even the play of the Leela, that also is there. Even the Leela can be very wrongly interpreted. It is true that he is playing, but it is wrongly interpreted. So now, what are the interpretations? One by one, we'll have a look at them. Okay. Here, what is it? It corresponds to all the views humanity has on this imperfect world. In that case, in which case the physical world is permanently imperfect. The only reasonable explanation of such a paradoxical manifestation of creation is that it's a cosmic game, a leela, a play, an amusement of the divine being. Is it satisfactory? So now he looks at all the other things. There are many who say that. It's a leela, a play, an amusement of the divine. He has playing a game. He has plunged himself into the opposite of himself or the opposite of what he has created and his experience. He is escaping from them. Even there it can be different. Okay. In the chapter, the problem of the suffering, pain and suffering, those two chapters. Okay. He has described all the different possibilities and all the theories. Okay. Even if you think that it's a game, there are two ways of interpreting. He creates something which is anti-divine and enters into it, or doesn't enter into it. That also is another case. He has discussed all this in this para. We'll have a look at it. Okay, so, first interpretation, trying to safeguard and justify God. Okay. No, God is very good. He can't do something bad. Okay, according to your idea. It may be he pretends to be undivine. Actually, he is not. That's the first idea. He pretends to be undivine. Wears that appearance like a mask or a makeup of an actor for the sole pleasure of the pretense of the drama. Now, this is also a very interesting thing. This view can be taken positively as well as negatively. Okay. So, take for instance the idea that, yeah, he is pretending to be undivine. Now, there is a truth to that because the Advaita philosophy says it's the individual soul has come down to the physical world is very similar to an actor on the stage. Okay. Suppose you are an actor on the stage. Let us say that actor is someone, what shall we call him? A very common Indian name. Okay, let us say, not Krishna. I don't want to use any God name, but any common name. In India, all names are all related to the divine. That's the problem. Okay, let us say Hari. Okay, Hari is in charge of the laundry. Okay, so Hari is an actor, and he has to play his part on the stage. Suppose, let's say, he has to play the part of a good man. Okay. Now, if he is a very good actor, he comes on the stage and he forgets that he is Hari and he thinks that he is so and so. Okay, let us say Madhusudan. So while he is on the stage, he has forgotten that he is Hari and he is Madhusudan. Now, during the whole play, he is Madhusudan and not Hari. That's exactly similar to our normal human individual. We think that we are body, mind, life, we are Madhusudan. But we are not. We are Hari. And Hari is our psychic being and the divine element in us. But we have forgotten that. Now, in 2 hours' time, when the drama ends, Madhusudan now goes back to being Hari. Okay? That's exactly what happens to us. That is on 2 hours, but here it is several lives. Okay? When we realize that we are not the body mind life, we are not Madhusudan, but we are Hari, we realize that we are eternal and we are a portion of the divine. So this argument is not wrong, okay? But it can be interpreted wrongly. Okay? So, a leela, a play, an amusement of the divine being. It may be he pretends to be undivine. He is playing the part of on the stage. He is playing the part of someone else. But in the case of the actor, it is intentional. Even in the spiritual life, we have intentionally come down. The individual soul has come down intentionally. Okay? But he has forgotten about it. Okay? He is so good an actor that he has forgotten about it. But when he gets pain and suffering, he realizes that he should go out and stop pretending. Wears that appearance like a mask or makeup of an actor. There, he has even used that. Okay? This is a very common example given in the Advaita philosophy. Okay? So, for the sole pleasure of the pretense or the drama. So there also see, if it's a pretense, then it's a not a very correct argument. But it's a drama, yes, there is some truth to that. Okay. So all these are possibilities. If you consider the physical world absolutely unreal. Okay. That's why I said this, discussing all the possibilities when you consider that the physical world is imperfect. 1 second. Or else, I'm reading the next sentence. Or else, he, the divine, standing in heaven, has created the undivine, created ignorance, sin and suffering, just for the joy of a manifold creation. Now that also is a fact, because the dualities are the manifold creation, or manifold, whatever you want, okay? Because that is also a fact. Okay? But he has created, you are interpreting undivine and ignorance and sin and suffering, but he is not interpreting that way. He is interpreting only the manifold creation. High power, low power. Just as we said, we give the example of a very soft wind and a very intense wind. Okay? So you give ideas of good and bad, but he is not saying anything of the sort. Light and darkness, you are saying good and bad, but he doesn't say good and bad. So this also can be seen in 2 ways, in the right way and the wrong way. Okay? So, or there is another thing, or perhaps, as some religions curiously suppose, he has done this so that there may be inferior creatures who will praise and glorify him for his eternal good, okay? Wisdom, bliss, and omnipotence, and try feebly to come an inch nearer to the goodness in order to share the bliss on pain of punishment. There you are, okay? By some supposed eternal comma dash. This comma dash also is a very a device that Sri Lanka uses often. Parenthetical phrase. If, as a vast majority, must by their very imperfection, they fail in their endeavor. So, if you fail in your endeavor, you are punished. So, or you will see very often many people, okay, Christians and even the Muslims, Allah is great. Okay, Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. You don't need to say that; it's so obvious. So you are trying to satisfy him. You are trying to propitiate him, or even in the on many cars, those who belong to the, if you notice carefully at the back of the windscreen, the back one, okay, they put God is great. Okay, so or God is love. Okay, so these are all ideas. You are praising the divine. Okay, so they don't need to praise the divine at all. You have to become the divine. So that's what it is. Very interesting. All these cases that he's giving, they are partly true, and you can also interpret the wrong thing. As some religions curiously suppose, he has done this so that there may be inferior creatures who will praise and glorify him. Both in Christianity as well as in Islam, this idea is there. Praise and glorify. praise the Lord. There are some sermons who say, let us praise the Lord. Sounds very funny to the Indian ear. Okay, glorify Him for His eternal goodness, wisdom, bliss, and omnipotence, and try feebly to come an inch nearer to His goodness in order to share the bliss. Why? On pain of punishment if we don't succeed. If they fail in their endeavor, they are going to be punished. That's a Christian theory. God creates the soul and then He judges him at the end of the kingdom come. The kingdom of God comes on earth, each soul is judged. If you have lived well, you go to heaven. If you have lived badly, you go to hell and burn forever. So, and this punishment is and reward is permanent. There is only one life. Okay? This is the interpretation. So therefore, morality becomes very important in the physical world, okay, for them. Very, very important. By some supposed eternal, if, that she is put in comma dash, if as the vast majority must by their very imperfection, they fail in their endeavors. And they're saying that most people will fail because we are all imperfect. And so, in a sense, they all go to hell. Okay. But to the doctrine of such a Leela, so crudely stated, because the Leela can also be very correctly stated. That also is possible. So a Leela so crudely stated, there is always possible the retort that a God himself all blissful, who delights in the suffering of creatures or imposes such suffering on them for the faults of his own imperfect creation, would be no divinity, and against him the moral being and intelligence of humanity must revolt or deny his existence. That's exactly what happened to Mother and Srimad also. Mother was absolutely against the Christian religion. How can there be punishment for the divine? Impossible. So she rejected. She became she became an atheist. Okay? Because at that time, God is the Christian conception. So she rejected that. I can't accept this divine who is going to punish me. Okay? But the doctrine of Leela can also be interpreted correctly. Okay? That's the whole point. Okay? Because it's part of the Advaita philosophy. The Leela, the divine is playing a game. And what you are saying as a suffering is not really a suffering. Okay? Behind the suffering there's a justification for the suffering. It's a different interpretation altogether. But to the doctrine of such a Leela, so crudely stated, there is always possible the retort that a God himself all blissful, who delights in the suffering of others. Now here also there are two possibilities. You can say he is enjoying the suffering of others, okay? Or he is tolerating it. In other places he says the others are suffering, but he tolerates it, doesn't do anything to improve their condition, or imposes such suffering on them for the faults of his own imperfect creation. He has created. In Christianity, the soul is breathed into a body. Okay? On birth, just as there is a birth, the soul is created and breathed. So the divine has created the soul. So how can the divine say that you are doing something bad, I'll take you to hell? How can he do that? It's his own fault. That's what Seth is pointing out. So illogical. So all these religions are full of illogical things. Even don't think that the Hindu ideas also are perfect. Not at all. There are so many. All religions are imperfect. They are an attempt to go up, but in Indian also they have so many different wrong ideas. No? When a young widow, she loses, a young girl loses her husband, she is considered widow and she is inauspicious. So send her away to Haridwar or to Kashi and let her be there in the widow's home. All these are facts actually in India. So horrible. No? So these things, all religions have got these wrong ideas. So Srimad has examined all the possibilities and is saying that if the physical world is considered to be permanently unreal, all these different theories can be there. Okay? And some of these theories are partly true. That's the whole funny part. You have to interpret them correctly. Okay? But now Srimad says, if you don't accept the Is there another possibility? But if the human soul is a portion of the divine, it's a portion of the divine, it's essentially divine. If it's a divine spirit in man that puts on this imperfection and in the form of humanity consents to bear this suffering, that means the divine himself has come down and is subjecting himself to suffering. Or if the soul in humanity is meant to be drawn to the divine spirit and is his associate, the individual is a partner in the evolution of the physical world. He is a partner of the divine. He is associate in the play of imperfection here, in the delight of perfect being otherwhere. Here is imperfect, but he is perfect elsewhere, otherwhere in heaven. The Leela may still remain a paradox, but it ceases to be a cruel and revolting paradox. So now the Leela can also be interpreted correctly. It can be interpreted wrongly, it can be interpreted correctly. But it remains a paradox. You can't really understand why the divine is doing it. It can at most be regarded as a strange mystery and to the reason inexplicable. That's what the Advaita philosophy says. It says the ultimate truth is ineffable. You can't explain it. It is anirvachaniya. You can't put it into words. Okay? So it is ineffable. You can't describe it in any way. And the human mind cannot understand it. But if you want to understand it, rise to the next level. There you will find the justification for the creation of a so-called and apparently imperfect world. It's not imperfect. It's only a superficial phenomenon. So that's what Shakespeare is. Okay. Now, is there another way of interpreting this? The strangeness of the play. He is still playing with the idea that the physical world is imperfect. Okay. Because there is an imperfection in this at the surface. That also is partly true. You must remember that. So, we have got about 10 minutes. So, we can read the next one. The strangeness of the play diminishes. Archana, the read, so next one, either Shilpa or Yasmin or Sumki. One of you read.
I can read.
Okay, go ahead.
I am out of Pondicherry.
Okay, go ahead.
The strangeness of the play diminishes, the paradox loses its edge of sharpness if we discover that. Although fixed grades exist, each with its appropriate order of nature, there are only firm steps for a progressive ascent of the souls embodied in forms of matter, a progressive divine manifestation which rises from the inconscient of the superconscient or all conscient status with the human consciousness as its decisive point of transition. Imperfection becomes then a necessary term of the manifestation. For, since all the divine nature is concealed but present in the inconscient, it must be gradually delivered out of it. This graduation necessitates a partial unfolding, and this partial character or incompleteness of the unfolding necessitates imperfection. An evolutionary manifestation demands a mid stage with gradations above and under it. Precisely such a stage is the mental consciousness of man, part knowledge, part ignorance, a middle power of being still leaning on the inconscient, but slowly rising towards the all conscious divine nature. A partial unfolding, implying imperfection and ignorance, may take as its inevitable companion, perhaps its basis for certain movements, an apparent perversion of the original truth of the being. For the ignorance or imperfection to endure, there must be a seeming contrary of all that characterizes the divine nature. It's unity, it's all consciousness, it's all power, it's all harmony, it's all good. It's all delight. There must appear limitations, discord, unconsciousness, disharmony, incapacity, insensibility, and suffering even. For without that perversion, imperfection could have no strong standing ground, could not so freely manifest and maintain its nature as against the presence of the underlying divinity. A partial knowledge is imperfect knowledge, and imperfect knowledge is to that extent ignorance, or contrary to the divine nature. But in its outlook on what is beyond its knowledge, this contrary negative becomes a contrary positive. It originates error, wrong knowledge, wrong dealing with things, with life, with action. The wrong knowledge becomes a wrong will in the nature. At first, it may be wrong by mistake, but afterwards wrong by choice, by attachment, by delight in the falsehood. The simple contrary turns into a complex perversion. Conscience and ignorance, once admitted, these form a natural result in a logical sequence and have to be admitted also as necessary factors. The only question is the reason why this kind of progressive manifestation was itself necessary. That is the sole point left obscure to the intelligence.
So, Swayambhu is here saying we will accept there is an imperfection in the physical world, but we will try to find some reason for it. So, until now, we have been examining all the different philosophies and different ideas which say that the physical world is permanently imperfect. Now he is suggesting that it is not permanently imperfect, there is an evolution. He is introducing the idea of evolution. Mind you, he is accepting the imperfect physical world, but it is not permanent. That's it. There are many who are very, very shallow optimists who say, no, 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 everything is perfect here. Remember, I read out that shallow optimism thing, okay? The sky is blue and the sun is shining and the God is everywhere, the bird is singing. Fine, where is it? There's no problem. That's absolutely a shallow optimism. Swayambhu does not accept shallow optimism. He says that the physical world is imperfect, but it is not permanently imperfect. There is an evolution. So, when you interpret in this way and bring in the idea of evolution, other problems have to be explained, but the whole mystery of why the divine is creating something permanently imperfect disappears. That mystery disappears. So that's what Swayambhu is saying here. We have got 5 minutes. We'll start looking at what he's saying. The strangeness of the play diminishes. He's using the word play, Leela. Okay? Leela is there, definitely. But if you interpret wrongly, there's a problem. So now you are not interpreting wrongly. You say that there is a evolution. You have brought in the idea of evolution. The strangeness of the play diminishes. The paradox loses its edge of sharpness if we discover that although fixed grades exist, each with its appropriate order of nature, note that there are many, many worlds. There are 7 planes, and each plane has got its own laws and its own rules of existence. And the nature of each world goes on changing. That's what he's saying. There are fixed grades. The lowers are imperfect and the highers are more perfect, just like the sea or the atmosphere. Okay, so each exists with its appropriate order of nature. In every level, the rules that obtain there, the laws that obtain there, are appropriate only to that level and not to other levels. Exactly like in the physical world also, the laws that operate in one country are not the same as the law operates in other countries. So the laws of the physical world are one, the laws of the vital world are different, the laws of the mental world are again different, and so on and so forth until you come to the last. Okay, it is so surprising that Mother said after her experience of the supramental board, she said that we feel that the spiritual realities are the ultimate. But it is surprising that when she went to this supramental plane, even the spiritual truths are not valid there. So you can imagine how relative the whole thing is. Okay, so that's what Shendra is now interpreting. There is an evolution and there are grades of consciousness, and each consciousness is different. Therefore, there must be something which is absolutely imperfect. Otherwise, there is a question of evolution. You have to start from the bottom and go to the top. So that's what he is interpreting here. Although fixed grades exist each with its appropriate order of nature, they are only firm steps for a progressive ascent of the souls embodied in forms of matter. Forms of matter, bodies, vitals and minds, they are embodied in forms of matter. A progressive divine manifestation, there you are, the evolution is there, which rises from the inconscient to the superconscient, or all conscious status, with the human consciousness as its decisive point of transition. So, this is interesting. What does it mean by the human consciousness is a decisive point of transition? Because before that, matter was there, but there was an evolution, very slow evolution. And from matter came out life, and from life came out mind, but very slowly, millions of years. Now that man has come into the picture, that means the mind plane is reached. There is a definite, decisive point of transition. What is that point of transition? The evolution becomes conscious. Okay, man can create a conscious ascent upwards. In life you can't do that, and matter you can't do that. So there is universal nature is slowly going upward, but it takes very, 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 very long because there is no will and there is mechanical law. So that's why it took years and years, eons actually, millions of years for. But once man has come, nature now can benefit through man's personal effort. He has the capacity. That's why it's a turning point. That's what Swami is saying. Okay. So, yeah. Is a decisive point of transition is when man comes on the scene. Now the evolution can become conscious and not mechanical anymore. Imperfection becomes then a necessary term of the manifestation, because our theory now is that there is an evolution, and evolution means from the lowest to the highest, there is a climb. So naturally you have to suppose that there is an imperfection at the bottom. So now he is explaining, at least there is some explanation. But why is it so? That again there are other questions arise. Okay? Ultimately, the problem cannot be solved in its entirety at these levels. The ultimate solution can come only at this supramental level, which cannot be put into words. But some sort of attempt to do so is possible, and that's what Sindhu is saying he will do. Okay? Imperfection then becomes a necessary term of the manifestation. Okay, but it is now 8:35 now. So I think we'll take it up next time, because we are only in the first sentence of the paragraph. So anyway, basically this is what he's saying. He is now he's saying, let us suppose that there is an evolution, and that evolution will explain why there is an imperfection in the physical being. As I said, he is not rejecting the theory that the physical world is imperfect. But behind the imperfection, which is a superficial phenomena, there is the divine presence and there is evolution. It is not permanently defective. It can be changed. That's the whole idea. So next time we'll redo this pattern. The strangeness of the play disappears.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah. Okay. Merci everybody. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Dr.
Au revoir everybody.